Wonder Woman 1984 does such a disservice to the first Wonder Woman film. On one hand, I genuinely expected this movie to go all out with this 80s theme that they kept emphasizing throughout the build-up to its release. On the other hand, I'm also sort of not shocked that they didn't do much with it considering it's a DCEU film. Look, I've watched every single DCEU movie, and it's easy to say that this movie is the most disappointing movie. You might be thinking, what about Justice League, Suicide Squad, Man of Steel, Batman v Superman? With Justice League, we have the Snyder Cut coming out that may potentially redeem the film, and as for the rest of those movies, they didn't have the expectations of Wonder Woman 1984. Before I get any further into the video, I'm your host, Justin, otherwise known as IDontBeatGames, and I'm here to bring that DCEU content right to your monitors. Part of what made Wonder Woman such a good film, besides the fact that it was the first good woman-led superhero movie, is that it told such a good story. We got to see Diana grow as both a person who's never been exposed to the real world and as a superhero who fulfilled her dream of defeating Ares. Diana in Wonder Woman wasn't insufferable, making awfully questionable decisions, and more importantly, she didn't have a previous movie that created expectations for the Diana we were given. In Wonder Woman, she was powered by love and empathy. We were given so many small examples showcasing how much she loves and cares about others. Whether it was seeing hurt soldiers, seeing a woman with her baby crying, or even seeing her sit back and appreciate the miniature village of people dancing around her, we saw how much love empowered Diana. I go into more detail about this in my first Wonder Woman video, which if you haven't seen it, you should watch it before I tear into Wonder Woman 1984. When it comes to Wonder Woman, most people can agree that the first two acts are genuinely strong and good. I understand that for some, if not most people, the third act is hit or miss, and I can totally see why. It didn't feel like they were trying to do too much when it came to Wonder Woman, which now brings me to Wonder Woman 1984. Wonder Woman 1984 tries to do way too much, and it's to the point by the time you're an hour and a half into this movie, you're already hoping it's over. Wonder Woman 1984 does such a poor job at keeping the viewer entertained because for the most part, you're there to see Wonder Woman kick ass and have a good time. You're not here to watch a movie that feels like it revolves around everyone but Wonder Woman. Even when Diana is on the screen, most of the scenes are once again carried by Steve. Speaking of Steve, let's talk about why the choice of bringing him back felt so problematic. The entire plot of Wonder Woman 1984 basically revolves on this stupid rock that grants wishes and the idea that nothing good comes from lies. Turns out, in Diana's case, her one true wish is to have Steve back. The problem is that rock grants the wish, but not fully. It grants the wish with a slight twist. In Steve's case, he comes back, but he's not actually himself. He's in another person's body. However, because it's Diana's wish, we see the Steve we all know and love. There's a scene that implies she has sex with Steve, but remember, it's not his actual body. I know this seems odd to complain about, but does that not sound a little problematic when you realize this? Anyway, Steve comes back and suddenly Diana acts like an entirely different person. Even when Steve was there in Wonder Woman, she didn't act like she couldn't see clearly or couldn't make clear-headed decisions. In fact, she literally calls Steve out half of the time that she's with him in the beginning of the movie. Remember when Steve brings her to London and she immediately calls him out for not bringing her directly to Ares? Remember the scene where Steve is reporting to his boss and lying in front of Diana, only for her to immediately freak out about him lying? Diana's entire mindset is that one needs to tell the truth and nothing but the honest truth. That's when she learns from Steve that he was lying for the greater good so they can do what they need to do in that movie. In Wonder Woman 1984, just because she brings Steve back and gets to live her dream of loving him again, her entire mindset gets clouded by this. I understand the pain she went through in Wonder Woman when Steve died because she took her pain out on Ares, but if you mean to tell me that all these years later, she couldn't healthily cope and know from the beginning that having Steve back was wrong, I'd like to call bullshit on that. This brings me to Maxwell, Lord, and Cheetah, the two villains of this movie. We'll start with Cheetah first, and then I'll talk about Maxwell, Lord. Cheetah's entire storyline is absolutely ridiculous. Cheetah's whole story is that she wants to be like Diana. She envies her confidence, her beauty, and everything that Diana is like when she meets her at Diana's job. So of course, the Rock or whatever grants Cheetah's wish, except it leads into Cheetah becoming a power-hungry villain who's overly dramatic. Cheetah suddenly does her hair, dresses differently, and acts confident after this wish is granted. The problem is, all of this leads to all of her co-workers randomly falling in love with her. It's so weird because it feels like all she needed to do was become actual friends with Diana, learn these things from her, and maybe, just maybe, a similar or more logical outcome could have happened. Over the course of time, she becomes super obsessive with this new life she was given, and the problem is, none of it is believable. You can be someone who's worked on yourself over time, gain confidence, and become more good looking without being an awful person. Once again, I understand the premise is nothing good comes from lies, which is why she turned out to become this person, but it still doesn't feel believable. Tell me that DC decided to make a separate Cheetah film to establish her character that falls into a storyline where the movie ends with her getting confronted by Wonder Woman and the follow-up movie tells us that story. That would be more entertaining because it wouldn't take away the light from Diana and it would shred this movie probably around 45 minutes of time. I'd be okay with that. Would I genuinely truly care about Cheetah's solo film? Honestly, no. Would I be even more intrigued if the final scene led to her being confronted by Wonder Woman as a prelude to the next Wonder Woman film? Hell yes. To add to this disappointing Cheetah storyline, the biggest thing they hyped up was a letdown. It felt like the closer we got to Wonder Woman 1984, the more we saw and heard about how amazing Cheetah was going to look. Then we get Wonder Woman 1984, and Cheetah's transformation is literally like a 5-minute fight. Not only that, but the fight sucked as well. It wasn't even all that entertaining. It just feels like the ball was dropped so damn much when it came to Cheetah as a whole, and it genuinely sucks, man. This brings me to Maxwell Lord and his problematic ending. Maxwell Lord's entire plot is that he's obsessed with this rock or whatever that grants wishes, and he ends up discovering how powerful it truly is. It ends up becoming too powerful for him to the point where he gets headaches and begins to act crazy due to him granting way too many wishes. To emphasize this, he literally grants so many wishes that the world begins to fall apart. Maxwell Lord's story is believable, and honestly, it feels like this would have been fine story-wise without Cheetah taking up so much screen time and dragging this movie along. There are only a few problems I even have with Maxwell's storyline. Firstly, there's a montage that happens with him granting wishes towards the end of this movie. In this montage, there's a terribly racist thing that is shown, and I can't believe that they allowed it to be in the final cut of the film. It was just in terrible taste, and I don't care what justification people can provide. It simply wasn't okay. Secondly, towards the ending of the movie, one of the things that stops Maxwell from using his powers is his son. The problem is, throughout the entirety of Wonder Woman 1984, he treats his son like an inconvenience and like a second thought. He pretty much just pushes his son aside 90% of the time. For Maxwell to see his son lost in the awful world he created and have that be the thing that changes his emotional tune, it just doesn't feel believable. If you told me that we'd be given more scenes showcasing he had more positive feelings about his son, that's different. They barely did this. It was almost like a handful of scenes, and even then, you can tell he was only doing it because he felt guilty. Then there's the end of the movie. Diana spends her time holding onto Maxwell with her lasso and talking to him. She's giving this huge speech about how people need to stop wishing and whatnot, but it's not directly at him. Knowing Diana, part of it was intended for him to hear, but she was just talking to the people who can apparently hear her through him or a broadcast that Maxwell was doing. Man, I don't know. It wasn't really explained, and maybe I simply didn't notice something that I should have noticed, but honestly, it was such an unsatisfying ending to an awfully unsatisfying movie. I know, I shouldn't group Maxwell Lord and this problem together, but he's involved, therefore it counts. Don't get mad at me. Regardless of these flaws though, Maxwell Lord is what makes this movie semi-entertaining, and that's mostly because Pedro Pascal does such a phenomenal acting job in this movie. If there is any positive thing to take away from this movie, it's his acting and how good of a character Maxwell Lord is. I honestly enjoyed Pedro Pascal as Maxwell Lord so much that I would have preferred the entire movie to just be him versus Diana rather than throwing in Cheetah for whatever reason. He was that enjoyable and did that much of a good job despite the few complaints I have about him. The question becomes, is Wonder Woman 1984 worth watching at all? The answer to that question is honestly, not really. Even if you want more Wonder Woman action, there barely is any action in Wonder Woman 1984. In fact, it was pretty shocking that there was such a lack of action sequences considering how much action we've seen of Wonder Woman in Batman v Superman, Wonder Woman, and Justice League. As someone who loved Wonder Woman, it's hard to not be disappointed after watching Wonder Woman 1984. It's sad to know that the conclusion of our road to Wonder Woman 1984 has come to such a sad ending. Wonder Woman 1984's final ranking is above Batman v Superman, which isn't saying much. It's been an enjoyable series, don't get me wrong, but it's been a ton of work and I'm glad to see we finally wrapped up this series. If you're curious about what's next, I have my very first video game essay that has been in the works for a while and I'm genuinely excited to see what people think about it when the video comes out. After that, I'll likely dive into more fun videos such as the Fantastic Four movie, the Green Lantern movie, Spider-Verse, and that's all I'm really down to spoil right now. As always, I'm your host, Justin, otherwise known as IDontBeatGames, and it was my pleasure to bring that DCEU content right to your monitors. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button. If you really enjoyed this video, hit that sub button. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, write a comment down below. Don't forget to keep it real with peace, love, and positivity.